From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lede. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on February 14th, 2025. Happy Valentine's Day. Aww. Yo, happy Valentine's Day. You are my Valentine, all of you out there. On this episode of The Lede, we look at the abortion debate that played out in the state Supreme Court this week, the bills that moved and got stuck in the State House during the fifth week of session. State lawmakers will also have more of your money, that's right, your money to budget with, thanks to growing revenues. Up in Washington, Congresswoman Nancy Mace made serious allegations from the House floor, and Senator Lindsey Graham continued his work on budget reconciliation to advance the Trump administration agenda. Now, I was talking about Valentine's a moment ago, so I'd really appreciate it if maybe you give me a call. 803-563-7169. You don't have to be my Valentine, but I just want to hear from you. That'd be nice. It'd be a nice gesture. We still haven't changed the voicemail box, so you're going to have to suffer through that, but still, 803-563-7169. Give us a shout. Get on the wind down with us. Talk about the Eagles. We don't have to talk about football anymore. This maybe could be the last time for a while. Just what else is going on in your world? We always love hearing from you guys. 803-563-7169. The state of South Carolina and Planned Parenthood South Atlantic were back in court Wednesday as lawyers from both sides debated over the definition of what a, quote, fetal heartbeat, quote, is and when it begins. Attorneys for Planned Parenthood argue it is around 9 weeks rather than the state law that puts it around 6 weeks of pregnancy. That state law defines a fetal heartbeat as, quote, cardiac activity or the steady and repetitive rhythmic contraction of the fetal heart within the gestational sac, quote. Catherine Humphreyville for Planned Parenthood argued that at 9 weeks, when a fetus, not an embryo, has developed is when a heartbeat is detected, rather than electrical impulses interpreted on a transvaginal ultrasound as a heartbeat.
So I think that this goes to the differences between SB1 and SB 474. And so one key difference between these two acts is that SB1 specifically defined human fetus as beginning at conception, whereas SB 474 essentially crossed out human fetus and equating that with unborn child. And so here, the legislature is free to define terms as they wish, and here it removed the definition of fetal. And so that tells the court that you need to look at the sort of common understanding. And so everything in the record in this case points to the fact that it's only after 9 weeks that an embryo becomes a fetus.
We're left with your dependence here, as I hear what you're saying, on the interpretation of 3 words: steady, rhythmic, and fetal.
I think that is the core of our argument, Your Honor. And I think that just
steady and rhythmic have no medical precision.
Not to my knowledge, no, Your Honor.
Contend that fetal does.
Fetal does have precision. This is, again, uncontested in the records.
That was Justice John Cannon Few questioning Catherine Humphreyville. After her presentation, 2 lawyers presented for the state, including Grayson Lambert, representing the governor's office, who answered to Justice George James's question here.
The words 6 weeks are not in the text of the statute.
What the statute is doing, Justice James, is not drawing a bright line at a number of weeks or using a number of weeks as a heuristic for a point in pregnancy. Instead,
so that gets to the question of what's a fetal heart.
Correct. And I think I've given...
What is it? In the medical science, what is it?
A fetal heart is a term that is commonly used both in academic publications like I just mentioned and in common usage in legislative debates in South Carolina and across the country to refer to a point in pregnancy at approximately 6 weeks when that heartbeat can be detected via ultrasound. But Justice James, I want to just say this perhaps. If you think fetal heart on its face has no clear meaning, at best it has to be ambiguous here. You've got this court and 4 justices more than 80 times in Planned Parenthood 1 calling it a 6-week bill. You have Planned Parenthood calling it a capital S, capital W, capital B, 6-week ban more than 300 times in their filings. And in Planned Parenthood 2, in their brief in that case at page 42, note 50, they called the 6-week mark the hallmark feature of the 2023 Act. If it is possible for the term fetal heartbeat to unambiguously mean 9 weeks, I don't think it's conceivable that any of those things I just described could have been true. I don't think there's any way 4 members of this court get an unambiguous term wrong in the same way. I don't think there any way lawyers get that term wrong in 2 separate cases in this court, plus cases in federal court. So if that's the case, Justice James, the term's ambiguous.
We'll find out the fate of that phrase in the coming weeks. But for some background, Planned Parenthood said that between August 23, 2023, when the restrictive abortion law took effect, and January 31, 2024, the healthcare provider turned away 75% of patients seeking abortions in the state. Of that, 906 patients were turned away, and 86% had pregnancies that were 9 weeks or less. So in February 2024, Taylor Shelton, who, despite having an IUD, discovered she was pregnant but past 6 weeks, and Dr. Catherine Ferris could not treat her. She eventually made multiple trips to North Carolina for the procedure, and the two filed a suit in Richland County Court, which in May 2024 ruled in favor of 6 weeks, setting up the appeal to the High Court, made up of 4 men and 1 woman. Let's go across the street and look at the State House and some action there, starting with bills that made some moves in the House. S-253, a bill that allows for the hiring of an independent compliance consultant to review the office of the State Treasurer, Comptroller General, and State Auditor, which is part of the recommendations outlined by that outside audit firm Alex Partners when it audited the state over the $1.8 billion accounting error. Boondoggle, flim-flam, etc. Caper. Yes, S-253, well, it heads for ratification. That's because it's passed both chambers, and the House Speaker and the Senate President signed the bill before it goes to the governor. H-3309 is the House's version of the Energy Capacity Bill. It cruised to passage by a vote of 94-11. Now, a similar bill passed the chamber last year but died in the Senate, which has its own version of this bill. A lot of people say this is going to be a 2-year process, but the lead is optimistic, sometimes too optimistic. Speaking of energy, Beaufort Republican Senator Tom Davis kicked off Tuesday by calling on his colleagues to show support for the joint resolution backing state utility Santee Cooper's request for proposals for interested parties looking to restart construction of VC Summer nuclear reactors 2 and 3. Another little boondoggle taste for you guys. Davis chairs the Senate Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee, the LCI Committee, and said that State Commerce Secretary Harry Lightsey told him that 17 entities were looking into investing money to complete due diligence on the projects. Davis said, quote, "We have 40% of one reactor done and 20% of the other, all in good condition. We have a window of opportunity here, but we have to act with urgency," quote. So far, 37 of the 46 senators have signed on to Davis's S-51, which currently sits in committee. Back in the House for a minute, House Education Committee Chairwoman Shannon Erickson from Beaufort as well got unanimous House support for her Educator Assistance Bill, H-3196, which would make it so teachers would maintain certification with professional development instead of getting recertified every 5 years. Under the bill, districts would be required to provide the salary schedule before teachers sign annual contracts and be given at least 14 days notice of school assignments. Kind of crazy that they don't have this already. Now, the bill also specifies how districts must use non-instructional workdays. So, teachers, there you go. It's going to the Senate now. The Senate DOGE bill, S-318, which is similar to the House one that was just introduced, moved to the full Senate Finance Committee this week. The bill would create a 10-member panel. Here's Georgetown Republican Senator Stephen Goldfinch interacting with Berkeley Senator Larry Grooms about the bill.
Everything that the state has, including the budgetary process and the legislative oversight process, review, audit, all of those things, and look for fraud, waste, abuse, overburdensome regulations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which is where I suspect, Mr. Chairman, we'll make most of the hay. I don't suspect, for the committee's purposes, I don't suspect we're going to find hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in fraud, waste, and abuse as they may find in the federal government.
Well, and Senator, we currently have legislative oversight. We have Office of Internal Auditor. We have State Inspector General.
That's exactly
so we
right.
have a number of safeguards. But what you're proposing is a commission with multiple memberships, and I guess it's intended that private sector and other folks that aren't familiar with state government could still come in and point to what they believe would be areas of waste, fraud, and abuse that then we could take a look at.
I believe, Mr. Chairman, where we will find the most things that we can do to help South Carolina will be in overburdensome regulations that cost industry lots and lots of money.
A bill that got shelved this week was H. 3777, which went nowhere. To the shelf. It's on the shelf now. Elf on a shelf. Maayan Schechter covered the hearing and said that after a roughly 1 hour, seemingly scripted meeting on the legislation that would, if passed, allow certain narrowly defined car manufacturers to sell directly to customers rather than through car dealerships. Read Scout Motors, Lucid, Tesla, etc. In short, EV car owners and manufacturers asked lawmakers to pass the bill, saying that it would cut red tape regulation and increase competition in the state, all while allowing certain EV owners the ability to buy and service their cars in the state, rather than driving across state lines. Now, the auto dealers, who have been spending a lot of money, we've been told, fighting this bill, argue that Scout, which received more than $1 billion in state incentives to open a plant in Blythewood, was trying to circumvent the franchise system and close down local dealerships, which they argued are rooted in the community and often engage in charitable actions. Who's to say that Scout wouldn't, too, if it could be rooted in the community? We will find out. But after the testimony, well, the panel's chair and bill's sponsor, Berkeley Republican Representative Mark Smith, adjourned debate on the bill. So it didn't get carried over, not necessarily dead. It's in a bit of a limbo state. And Smith told Maayan Schechter after the hearing that there's potentially going to be conversations to find a middle ground. Moving on, books continue to be banned in South Carolina K-12 libraries. A process through the State Board of Education has applied to 11 such books. South Carolina Public Radio's Scott Morgan has this report on that process.
Let's start with the adults, and with something people pretty overwhelmingly agree with.
Words matter. Words are power.
Indeed. But this, of course, is where consensus often falls apart, and where arguments over which words are presented and by whom they're consumed begin. And very little about words gets debated quite so hotly as the words minors have access to. So in school districts around South Carolina, students can walk into a library and look for books that speak to them. They just might not find all the titles they go looking for, like these.
The first one is Perks of Being a Wallflower. The second material was All Boys Aren't Blue. The third one is Flamer. And the fourth one, Push.
On February 4th, the State School Board's Instructional Materials Review Committee, or IMRC, of which Christian Hanley is chairman, unanimously decided to pull those titles from school libraries, finding the books not age or developmentally appropriate due to sexual content. And that decision ignited a whole lot of debate about what exactly the removal of these books means. Is it, as the State Board of Education says, protection for minors against harmful materials? Or, as critics of the school board's decision contest, is it a straight-up book ban? Well, for starters, Cheryl Abrams-Collier, the IMRC member who told us up front that words matter, is adamant that taking these books off the shelves in school libraries does not add up to a ban.
It is very disturbing for people to make huge leaps in logic to, number one, say that we're banning books. No one is banning books. The committee is not banning books. That is not the purpose of this committee.
Members of the IMRC say the 4 books they voted out of schools are still available at public libraries, which themselves are under frequent fire for having certain titles in or near sections minors browse, and that all the books not allowed in schools are still available to buy in stores or online.
No one is saying, you can't read this book, don't read this book.
But that is exactly what a lot of advocates for book access hear. Public comment forums like the one on February 4th, they're filled with comments about censorship and governmental overreach, with each side sincerely talking about what's best for the children. What's less clear is whether anybody's actually asking the children.
I mean, I know what they're saying and that they think they are protecting kids, but kids are really smart and they're all creative, they're all their own people, and restricting books is just shutting them all down.
Harper Cridland Hughes is 16 and goes to high school in Beaufort, whence the parental complaint that got the 4 most recent books taken out of school libraries emanated. And she doesn't buy what the state school board is saying.
While they say they're doing it for the kids, they're really doing it for themselves to kind of protect themselves from ideas that might be different. And they're not really thinking of it from an actual, kid's perspective.
Harper was among a group of students who visited the State House Tuesday representing DALO. That's the Diversity Awareness Youth Literacy Organization. Amid a national purge of all things DEI, the young DALO reps wanted lawmakers to know that they think pulling books from school libraries is robbing kids of their ability to find themselves and find empathy for others.
As a child, having access to a lot of literature really shaped me as a person, made me more open to other people's ideas and more confident in just expressing myself.
15-year-old Emily Alaya goes to high school in Beaufort, too. Like Harper, Emily says talk of protecting kids from themselves is misguided.
When they say that they're protecting the kids, in their minds they're protecting the kids, but I feel like the kids are very unprotected. They aren't being able to show their true belief and learn empathy through reading. It would be a lot easier if you just had empathy for each other rather than hatred for a specific group.
For 17-year-old Patrick Good, books he's found in his school library have given him perspective on something he didn't realize he even had.
I have so much privilege just because I'm a straight white man in America. And I guess books are what taught me how much my privilege actually does.
And one thing Patrick says books have taught him about his privilege is how much of a privilege it is just to get to them.
First of all, I go to a private school, so I do have access to some of these books. Also, I have parents who do very well for themselves, and I'd be able to order books off Amazon whenever I really feel like it. But that's not everyone.
For example, Patrick says he volunteered at a school district in Beaufort County where more than half of the students live below the poverty line.
And I know a good portion of those kids won't be able to go home and order a half dozen books off Amazon every other month.
The end game for students representing DALO is to get state lawmakers to listen. They hope enough to get some kind of state legislation passed to protect access to books in school libraries. They're aware that that's a hard sell. But several of the kids say they need to try something, especially talking, since no one seems to be asking the kids what they think about decisions that are being made on their behalf.
Thanks, Scott. Moving up to Washington, on Monday evening, 1st District Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace gave a speech from the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives in which she accused 4 men, including her ex-fiancé, of sexual misconduct and rape. The men deny the allegations. But Mace also blamed State Attorney General Alan Wilson, whom she will likely face in the 2026 governor's race if they both decide to run as planned, for inaction. Mace made no mention of the ongoing investigation into the matter that the U.S. Capitol Police referred to the State Law Enforcement Division, which is currently still investigating the matter. Instead, she blamed Wilson, who later said he has no involvement, knowledge, or control of the investigation. Now, the allegations Mace made on the floor are protected speech, meaning Mace can't be sued for defamation or slander. But however, this will still likely result in a lawsuit. It sounds like several of those men have been lawyering up in this situation. Again, still under investigation. No one's been charged. This is a pretty big gray area for us to mention this situation, especially since, like I said, no one has been formally charged or convicted in any way. And there's an open investigation, which, again, Mace did not mention. So we're just going to go ahead and leave this entire kerfuffle here until there's something more definitive to actually report. Something very definitive to report is Senator Lindsey Graham speaking to the press. That's right. He spoke during the weekly Senate Republican press conference about the budget reconciliation process that is underway in his budget committee. The Senate plan would allow for a $150 billion increase in defense spending and boost border security funding by $175 billion. Here's Graham.
I was with Speaker Johnson at the Super Bowl Sunday with President Trump, and I told him, and I want to tell everybody in the country, I'm a huge fan, and nothing would please me more than one big, beautiful bill passed by the House that did all the things we need to do to make us prosperous and safe. That is my preference. Now, what guides my thinking is the problem we have now. We're running out of money. So we had Tom Holman and Russ Vought speak to the conference today, and I'm urging the Speaker to invite them over and let them tell the House what they told us. Tom Homan said, I am begging you for money. Russ Vought said that we're running out of money for ICE. We can't rob other accounts any longer. Why do we need this money? There are 300,000 children that are missing we want to find. The sooner we can find them, we'll end their abuse. And they're being abused while I speak. So to the American people, if you want your government to track down these 300,000 immigrant children that are missing, we need more money to do it. To the American people, if you'd like to finish the wall, we need more money to do it. If you want a more modern border, we need money to do it. If you believe that President Trump is right to track down and deport criminal aliens and clean up the mess that's been created over the last 4 years, we need more ICE agents. They gave us a summary of what $175 billion would do. It would be enough money for 4 years to implement President Trump's border agenda, immigration agenda on the security side. I am a fairly hawkish guy. I am telling you right now, I've never seen more threats to our nation than I do right now. We need $150 billion to help the military yesterday, and that will be part of this bill. We'll have money for the Coast Guard. We're just not going to spend $350 billion. We're going to pay for it. So what will happen tomorrow, hopefully, we'll mark up a budget resolution bill that says the Armed Services Committee will come up with a $150 billion plan to increase spending to make our military stronger and more lethal. We'll come up with a $175 billion plan to secure the border. That will be Judiciary and Homeland Security. Will enact that plan working with the administration. The other committees will be instructed by the Budget Committee to find offsets. So what will they do? They will go into mandatory spending accounts and find offsets to pay for this.
Let's look at some economic news in our state, where state economists have determined that based on tax revenue, your money that we're paying, well, they've seen some growth to the tune that there'll be even more money available for lawmakers to budget with this year. Or send back to you, we'll see. We're talking about an additional $666 million.
Oh, how you doing?
Okay, maybe we just round that to 670. We don't have to be that specific. Let's say 670. I'm sure there'll be a couple more million. $670 million new dollars in recurring revenue and $1.2 billion in one-time money. That's thanks to prior budget year surpluses. So that's in total $1.9 billion for lawmakers to use. And that's after accounting for the 0.1% decrease in the income tax and money for our rainy day funds. Now, the budget that the House Ways and Means members and staffers are currently crafting is around $14 billion. Again, just because they got all that extra $2 billion doesn't mean that they have to use all of it, but it sure helps. It sure helps, guys. Now, the Board of Economic Advisors said growth was better than anticipated, thanks to you. But still, they expect continued but slower growth. Again, we're tapping the brakes. We're being realistic here. Given the usual uncertainties about the tax filing season, which I paid more taxes so far this year, so you're welcome. And also, they chose to limit the amount of the increase until better information on final tax filing activity is known. So we'll get a better update in the spring. That's when we'll see the BEA give a final update for this budget year. And at that point, the Senate will be crafting its budget because the House will have passed its own. So stay tuned. I'm thinking, methinks, more money. If I had to pay extra money this year, that means there's more money floating around. I think that's how it works. Welcome to the wind down section, our little break from the news. We're not taking a break from A.T. Shire, lead producer, who's here.
I am here.
You decided not to go to the Eagles parade. We are thankful.
It hurts.
But
it hurts. I've been streaming it most of the day.
Gotcha.
I've taken a break to record this with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's honestly like the first moment. Like, I have nothing new to talk about, because I've watched the Super Bowl almost every day this week.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, I love that.
In some form, like they released the mic'd up version of it.
Yeah.
And so I watched the mic'd up version of it. And it'll just be on NFL Network, and I'll be like, yeah, I can watch this again.
Have you gleaned anything new? Does it keep
I
make you
absolutely
feel
have.
good?
Yeah.
What's the takeaways?
It makes me feel great. What really I've noticed is the absolute arrogance of the Chiefs.
Going back to this, yes.
The arrogance of the Chiefs to have no real game plan besides stop Saquon and have Mahomes on your team is, I mean, it was dumb. It was dumb. And also, this is very niche. This is very Philadelphia Eagles. But so many people are talking about, like, man, what happened to Andy Reid in this game? He didn't do well. This was vintage. As someone who had Andy Reid on their team for 12 years, I saw him ruin games like this all the time with Brian Westbrook and Donovan McNabb. And so it was just, this was a gift from the past. It was an echo of an alternate
String
time.
theory.
Exactly. Echoing through time to deliver this ring to Philadelphia. Anyway, Gavin, today is not...
Speaking of rings.
Speaking of rings, exactly. It's such a good transition. I didn't even mean it. Speaking of rings, it is Valentine's Day.
And I'm looking around the studio and I'm not seeing it.
No presents, no cards.
That's okay.
No cards.
It's okay.
It must be outside. It
has to be.
There's probably a car with a big bow out front. You know?
There's probably a big car with a big bow that I didn't want and a car I don't like.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because you got it for me without even asking if I needed a new car.
Exactly.
And I can't be mad about it.
I spent the entire year's budget on this surprise car.
A new to you Lexus.
Yeah, it's a February to Remebuary, you know?
And I wouldn't have this tidbit in the podcast looking at economic stuff, but retail sales were down a little bit in January. Guys,
that's why
I'm trying to
spending. I'm trying to bump this up.
I don't know what you guys are doing, but you got to get back to spending. I know I spent some money on my taxes.
I have noticed that the Dow,
prices?
the Dow is
Dow?
the direct correlation to giant bow sales. So I'm trying to infuse as much liquidity.
You read my thesis.
Yeah, into
my
into the giant
thesis.
car bow economy.
Well, yes, I started Valentine's Day off by juicing,
Yes.
which I know a lot of our listeners.
A lot
are
of chatter about the juice.
about the mulching.
Yeah, well, it's one and the same. You don't have one without the other, you know?
And I need to, now that I have all the leftovers, the pulp, I've already told our friend Brent, who she works in a garden nearby me. They want the pulp, the gold. They call it the gold.
They call it gold.
They call it gold, and they should be, because it's amazing. I'll be delivering it soon because it's taking up space in the fridge. I don't know where else to put it now. So.
Okay. So you're cold composting. Yeah. Good. That's good.
Well, I couldn't put it in the washing machine like you suggested.
No. See, this is where you're wrong, Gavin. You keep your laundry in the fridge. Because it's all denim, right? It's all denim.
Yeah, it's all denim.
You keep it in the freezer.
How many times have you seen me wear denim?
You keep it all in the freezer. That's how it cleans it.
That's just also a testament to my simplistic lifestyle.
Yeah.
I have enough clothes
He's like a monk.
fit in the fridge.
He's like a monk.
Cold storage.
Yeah, you don't have a bureau.
Tunics.
You don't have a bureau. Oh,
lot of
tunics.
tunics.
This guy loves a tunic. He loves a sarong. I don't know what that is.
What's the poncho?
Oh yeah.
I'm just gonna start wearing more ponchos and then
muumuus.
In the State House, you're required to wear a jacket and a tie. I'm gonna say, I dare you.
Yeah.
Watch me, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, excuse me.
You know you look good. Hey,
Yeah.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
I'll say, unhand me, guard. The fashion police, and that's what I'll say. First Amendment. I mean, I'm just looking for a case to bring to the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's. Do you have any plans for the Valentine's Day? Because I have none. As a married man, I have zero.
I mean, at that point, you're kind of just like.
Yeah.
Every day's Valentine's Day, right?
Isn't
that what they say?
Also,
Marriage?
you know me. As soon as society is telling me this is the day to do this, there's nothing I'd rather do.
I tell
less.
my mother, I'm like, I'll send you something for Mother's Day before or after. Like, it doesn't have to be the day.
Don't make me do it the
That's
day.
It's not even a real holiday.
Mm-hmm. I hate that.
But neither is this. But I haven't done nothing.
The consumerism makes me sick.
Maybe I'll buy myself something because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Candy hearts are disgusting.
I had a croissant today at work, so that was a treat.
I mean,
running croissants.
If you like the candy hearts, please call in, because that just means you took
chalk.
You took a look at chalk and thought,
hey, it has a funny message.
I would eat that. I'd eat that chalk.
I do like a sweet tart heart.
No, gross. Sweet tarts are bad. Sweet tarts are low on the totem pole.
Why are you doing this to me right
It's just
now?
low on the totem pole.
Yeah, but the sweet tart heart.
No, they're bad.
You're not hearing what I'm saying.
No, see, I don't.
Heart.
Are your headphones cutting out?
They're
I don't
like
think
a whole
you're.
handful.
I don't think you're.
It's so much better than those other ones.
But
because
sweet
they're-
tarts are not good. No,
Sure,
but
but
these
they're
are
better-
these are hearts.
But it's still better than that. What is it? It's not.
That's a low bar.
It's like a Necco wafer.
Yes.
Yes. Sure.
It's a low bar.
Also, love best candy for Valentine's Day are the red, which I don't know if these are going to exist in the future, but the red lollipops. The red
Just
heart
red lollipops.
The red heart
They
shaped
taste
lollipops.
like the Luden's cough drops.
Yeah, you want to talk about like how many licks does it take? There are none. I'm just chomping through those things.
I mean, just give me whatever shape Reese's is peddling right now.
Reese's, yeah, what's the current Reese's?
I'll eat it.
Is it
you know?
is the giant egg available yet?
Egg? Yeah.
They're not gonna. Even Reese's is gonna be like, sorry guys, egg prices are up.
Yeah,
we cannot produce.
Can't afford it.
I bought some eggs.
Regular eggs. Yeah,
I bought some brown eggs.
Good. Eggs are good.
$6.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's what it is.
It's a lot. See, this is what.
Tell us
this
how
is
much
why
you paid for eggs, guys.
You go to the farms. They have the chicken eggs there that you.
I know.
Can just sorta get.
I need to connect.
Yeah, go to Four Oaks Farms in Lexington. It's a mere 40-minute drive from our house.
I must forage here.
Yep. Okay. Anyway, Gavin, have a good Valentine's
Thank
Day.
you.
All listeners, you have a good Valentine's
Thank
Day.
you.
Call in with new words to call boondoggles because, I mean, Gavin read through a few of them today. And so we need some names for them. We got frou-frous. We got capers.
Oh, my God. I had breaking news. I didn't even talk about capers really quick. Went to Costco. And some of our OG listeners will know this about me.
The capers.
You go to a grocery store, you buy capers 2 ounces,
Meager,
it's $4.
meager.
You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
You go to Costco, you get 2 pounds for $6.
Yeah.
And then you find out that you can put capers on pretty much everything, and then I do. So, folks, there are capers in my fridge again.
That's what he's doing for himself this Valentine's
It's
Day.
called self-care,
It's
gang.
self-love, it's self-care.
Capers.
His skin is glowing. Anyway,
the
Gavin,
juice.
go ahead. Say goodbye.
Please give us a shout. We need new material. 803-563-7169. You can also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love that too. And you can stay up to date with the latest news on scetv.org and southcarolinapublicradio.org. And don't forget to support your local newspapers. The South Carolina Lede is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. Our producer is A.T. Shire. Amy Crouch is our supervising producer. Sean Birch is our executive producer. This podcast is produced with support from PRX and is made possible in part by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, as well as listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina. For the South Carolina Lede, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina.
Enough of this 600th episode stuff.
Is today 600?
No. 3 episodes from now.
I hope someone gets us a present. I would hope someone would be getting us a present.
I'm not gonna lie. You should get us a present.